Hello, and welcome to Books in the World, presented by the Cape Cod Writers Center, and we have a real treat for our viewers today. An author whose list of publications dwarfs most of mere mortals, and who has a distinguished line of books, Nancy Thayer. Nancy, is it 23 or 26 books?
29.
Oh my God. The woman is prolific. But I can tell you, as someone who has just read her most recent book and will be a fan of all her other books, that Nancy has a unique ability, and she lives in a magical place.
That's true.
And that place is Nantucket. So Nantucket is really a character, Nancy, right?
Nantucket is a character, partly because it's an island. It's 30 miles away from the coast, so it really is a complete little world. And that makes it special. Also, in the summer, when we get maybe 50,000 summer visitors, so many of them come over, and it's as if they think they're in the Love Boat or Disneyland, and it becomes a character because of the way people and their dreams are affected by being on Nantucket.
Well, that's really interesting. And she lives there full time.
Do you mean Darcy?
And you?
Oh, I live there full time.
Yeah. No, so that gives you a good opportunity to compare the new and the old. And I found that your writing is excellent, of course, but that you are particularly skilled at your character portrayals. So you want to tell us a little bit about Darcy, who is the story's heroine here?
I'm grateful to you that you said I do a good job with character betrayals. Betrayals, portrayals. There is betrayal, always or often, just as there is in real life. I've always written about families and friends in all my books. That's the core. And I think it's because I'll never understand my own family or my children's families, and I still haven't figured out my mother and father. I think families and family dynamics are infinitely fascinating, and they're at the heart of what makes us the kind of person we are and how we interact with the world. So when I start a book, I really start with a character, and I might write about that character for 50 pages and then not use anything more than a paragraph, because that's the way I get to know my character.
Absolutely, yeah. Now, I saw that all your works are categorized as, quote, women's fiction, unquote. What does that mean to you? Do you see it as a pejorative, or is it merely a descriptive?
First of all, women buy something like 95% of the books in the world. Second, when my first book came out, Stepping, it came out in 1980. It had a wonderful write-up in the New York Times Book Review. And when I went to my local bookstore, I heard the bookstore owner, who was a man, say, well, Nancy's book is in the dirty diaper field of literature. And for a moment I was really angry, and then I thought, yeah, that's right, and I'm glad, because all I ever want to do is write about normal people, normal women, normal families. I don't care about war. I don't care about killing elephants. I want to try and figure out, as the world changes, how our families remain intact.
I don't know. I give you a lot of credit for not reacting to the dirty diaper comment. I think I might have reacted, but you obviously...
Well, he was my next-door neighbor, and his wife was the principal at my children's school. So
discretion, right?
So I was like, I think I just let that go.
Yeah, on second thought, I think you certainly chose the wiser thing.
Yeah.
Now, you and I have talked a little bit about also people saying, oh, it's a good beach read.
Right.
Now, what does that mean to you? Because sometimes you see that as a pejorative, too.
Again, when it first was used, and I don't know who came up with the phrase beach book, beach read, but I have come to like it because I feel like when you see this cover or any of the cover of any of the beach reads by so many wonderful authors, you look at that and you know that's going to have a happy ending, and we love a happy ending. There's not going to be any starvation or mutilation or torture or hideous, heartbreaking things. It's going to be a story about somebody who's like us, who is struggling with the same difficulties that we struggle with, and there's going to be some romance in it. That's another thing that people are really afraid to say. I write romance. And everybody is like, oh, well, then you're not as important as I am. But I don't think there's a single soul in the world who doesn't want romance in his or her life. We all want romance. We all want happiness. We want to bond with people. And so I think beach books have become more and more a phenomenon, and there are more and more writers of beach books.
You know, you made an interesting point about romance writers,
Mm-hmm.
because so many times, because I write books that have romance in them, and so many times people want to say they're bodice rippers, which of course is a pejorative.
Uh-huh.
But your point, of course, is that there's an element of romance in almost everything.
Yes.
Hannibal Lecter had kind of a romance, with, an odd,
Yes,
bizarre, fava
yes,
bean kind of way.
Yes, yes.
And so that it's part of the human condition
Yes,
versus
it is.
anything else.
Well, if we're lucky.
Now, have all your books had a happily ever after ending?
At least a satisfactory and hopeful ending. Yeah. Which is what I would want for everybody that I meet, everybody that I know. I want them to have, if not happiness, at least hope for happiness.
You don't hold a grudge, Nancy.
Oh, I do.
Oh, okay. I'm uncovering the real Nancy here.
I'm on TV.
Oh, okay. No, because now the character here, we talked a little bit about her, Darcy.
Uh-huh.
You say you write, in your character description, because we all like to do that, to find out what are some of the facets of her character that you described.
First of all, she has achieved something she's wanted ever since she was a child, and that is she has become a librarian. And she's a librarian at the Nantucket Athenaeum on the island, which is our beautiful library. And she's a children's librarian. And she's wanted to be a librarian all her life. And so I knew that right away. She's divorced, and she's hoping to find a real man, a good man that she can love. But she's a little bit shy, a little bit wary. She's only about 30 years old, so she is past naivete and into having some wisdom about people. And she lives on Nantucket year-round, which is a huge part of her life, or anybody who lives on Nantucket year-round, because to be a year-rounder on Nantucket is really kind of weird, actually. We can get stuck there. We won't get our mail. Sometimes we can't get food or milk. So not everybody likes it. But there is always a tension on Nantucket between the summer people who think they are in fantasy land and the year-rounders. And here she is faced with 3 different families who have come for the summer, and their houses are all around hers.
Well, you know what? I thought that you defied the stereotype of librarians when you wrote this.
Yes,
the bun and the and I'm sure that makes all librarians happy. Libraries have played a big part in your career, though. Is that right?
I've spoken at a lot of libraries. I think I'm a writer because of libraries. When I grew up in Kansas, our family went every Saturday morning to the library. And there were 3 children, my father didn't go, but usually Mother got something for him. And And I loved getting books, and I could get them. I had a little card that they gave me. I didn't have to pay for it, and I could give it to them. And then I could get a pile of books to take home to read for the week. And I thought that was being King Midas. I thought that was fairyland. And then when I was, 10 or 12, at some point I realized human beings write these things. They're not just, they don't drift down from heaven onto the shelves. And I knew I wanted to be a writer.
Oh, at that young age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then you were published. You were fairly young in your career when you were published, right?
I was actually fairly old. I think I was 33 when I sold my first book. But I had traveled a lot. I had a master's in English. I taught in college. I had 2 children, and I had a lot of experience. And I found out what I really, truly wanted to write about, and that was family.
Are there any taboos that you will not break in your writing?
Nobody has asked me that question before. Well, I think in general I won't and would never want to write about any kind of unkindnesses to children. And that isn't an intellectual taboo so much as it is an instinctive stomach taboo. I admire all the people who can write seriously about what man can do to man or to children. I admire the people who write about war and write about starving children. And I read those books, and I'm glad they're there. But it's not in my heart to do that sort of thing. So that may not be a taboo, but it's a constraint.
Usually they do say children and animals. That
right.
for books that are principally geared toward women,
right.
even mystery books, that tends to be a taboo.
That's true.
And there's enough unkindness in the world as there is, right?
Right.
we don't have to propagate it any longer. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, tell me about Darcy's relationships with her ex-husband is part of this, right? Mm-hmm. So many of us have had that ex-husband or ex-wife type of thing. How did you deal with that?
The important thing about Darcy's ex-husband is that he has remarried, and the woman he's married has a 14-year-old daughter. And I wanted to write about this because every year I see more and more complexities in families. I see people becoming step-parents and then having step-sisters, step-siblings. I mean, if you got some families together, there would be more steps than the original person. And I think if you live in close proximity to an ex, it's really important to have some kind of graciousness. But I also think that the hardest lesson I ever learned was that I can't make my children happy, and I can't fix all their problems. That sometimes they're going to talk to other people about their problems, they're going to go to other people, and I may not even understand why they're talking to a certain person. But in this book, Darcy has a relationship with her ex-husband's stepdaughter. And that happens a lot. And the girl is 14, and she loves books, she likes libraries. They meet under difficult circumstances because sometimes the parents are not as much in charge of their children as they should be, which happens here. That I think, that complexity is what connects Darcy to all the people in this book.
In all your books, if you have one message about families, what would it be?
I think be tolerant. That would be the message. Be tolerant. It's in a lot of my books. It's be tolerant, be loving, Charlie could tell me the name of the band that sang this, but I often have a little line go through my head, which is, if you can't be with the one you love, love the one you're with.
Yeah,
yes.
That is a good song.
Yes, that is a good song. And that's a good thing to remember, too, because you don't always get a perfect child. I mean, I got perfect children, but maybe you didn't get perfect children. But love the child you're with. Love your friends. Be tolerant of differences.
You know, I have to say before I forget it that I was super impressed to find out that your books are in hardcover, because that's a decreasing phenomenon these days, the hardcover books. So that right away I said, boy, I have to read this lady's books, because that is Would you tell us from your standpoint in having so many books published, how the publishing industry has changed over the years?
That's fascinating, and it's been an enormous change. I think most people don't know that all the publishing houses in New York City who publish my book and almost all the books are owned by two German companies, von Holtzbrinck and Bertelsmann. That's so weird. I still can't get my mind around that, but they've bought up Charles Scribner's and Sons. They've bought up all the old publishing houses that we know about, and publishing has become more and more a sort of commercial activity with people way far up the food chain who just want to see the number of things sold, the number of items sold. This is an item. So that's a change, and it's changing a lot that way. But also technology. The fact that we now have the internet, that we have computers, that we have our phones. I used to have to cut and paste,
exactly,
and then go to the library and copy my manuscript, and then put it in a box and tape it up and go down to the post office and mail it to my editor. And now I just push send. For like a 400-page book, I still can't get over that. I love it that I can connect with so many people on Facebook. I think that's a phenomenal gift that has been given to us. Maybe not by Steve Zuckerberg, but by the fates that we can.
Mark.
Oh, Mark. Sorry, Mark.
Get those billionaires right.
Steve Jobs.
No, they're all those billionaires. What the heck, right?
Yeah.
But now what about ebooks? Has that changed either your readership or the sales percentages or anything for you?
I think about half of my books are sold as e-readers, and I think it has given me a larger readership, and I think part of that is amazing convenience. Mm-hmm. I know when I'm home at night and it's snowing outside and I'm in my pajamas and I really want a mystery, I can't get dressed and go down to the local bookstore because they're closed, and I just hit a few buttons on my Nook, which my son gave me, and I've got all the mysteries I want. And I think it has made, people were afraid that e-readers would kick the book out of existence, and instead there are more books being published, and lots of e-readers and more readers because of that.
Do you feel that the confluence of e-readers and self-publishing and self-published authors, has that affected you as a writer, or is your fan base so firm that it doesn't really matter?
I don't think it really matters. I think I don't know much about the self-publishing aspect. I know that it's there, and I think it's great. Because it's so hard to get a book published, you know that. It's so hard to get an agent. It's so hard to find a house that
gives you humility, though.
Oh, I hate humility.
Rejection. We all thrive on rejection. This is great.
Yeah. No, I think it's good that there are self-published books. I haven't seen a change in my fan base because of them.
Now, we were talking a little bit about the kind of fans that you do have, and they run the spectrum. Could you describe your average fan, or is it too difficult to pin it down?
No, I think it's pretty obvious. My average fan is a female. We know that. Big surprise. Anywhere from 40 to 100, and and all up and down all financial scales across the board financially. A lot of them are women who work, but a lot of them aren't women who work. I have a lot of librarians as fans. That's nice. I like that. Yeah. I think the people are humorous and generous, and I get that feeling from the Facebook interactions I have, and traditional, loving the holidays, celebrating the 4th of July, celebrating birthdays, that kind of maybe it's too sentimental. Maybe my fans are too sentimental, but so am I. So there you go.
Well, after 29 books, I think I think you've got the. So many people aspire to be writers, and we mentioned. You said one of them, your Facebook friend's a young girl who loves writing and reading and all that. What kind of advice do you give people who aspire to be writers, whatever age group they may be in?
I would say read everything. Read all the time. And if you don't like to read all the time, I'm not sure you'll be a writer. And write all the time. And I used to think it would be good to write a journal, but about 20 years ago I thought, I try to write a journal, and I have a family, and I'm writing books. Something has to go. So I had to give up writing a journal, and maybe I've put more of my own life into my books, but I would say to an aspiring writer, just sit down and write. Just write. Don't write a journal. Write the book you want to write. And be aware that you're going to throw a lot of it away. You're going to go upstairs and look at it the next day and think, this is horrible. But you might find a paragraph and you think, this is wonderful. This is what I'm going to go with. So work hard and be hopeful.
A lot of people who aspire to be writers don't like critiques of their work. How did you learn to deal with critiques that would be helpful and make you a better writer?
I think I learned to take my editor's critiques seriously, and I've been lucky to have mostly very good editors. As far as criticism from readers, I don't read reviews on Amazon because, for one thing, I don't have enough time to write and have a life. And it's also something that I know a lot of writers do. Let's say you have 600 wonderful reviews and one bad review. It's that bad review that's you're going to carry around in your mind and in your heart. You're going to think, and that's, I don't want to encounter that.
Yes, and some people do make a career of savaging the works of others,
That's
and
true.
I'm not sure it's helpful criticism. Did you ever do writing groups or any of that as you were coming up and learning to write?
I never had a writing group, and I didn't take a writing workshop. I took one class from when I was working on my master's on creative writing, and that was helpful because the teacher, C.D.B. Bryan, who's now gone aloft, as they say.
I like that. Gone aloft.
Yes. He said to me, "You're a writer." And he was a published writer. He'd published books. He had published a story in the New Yorker. And he said to me, "You're a real writer." And that yes,
no,
yeah.
Oh my goodness.
But I did a lot of stupid and wasteful things. I spent a lot of time being neurotic and isolated, staying home, writing a short story because I thought that would get published more easily, sending the same story to Good Housekeeping and then to an experimental journal in San Francisco, not being aware of who my audience was, not thinking about who my audience was. And I think if I had been with a writer's workshop, somebody might have said, science fiction is never going to publish you.
Not dystopian.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, what's next for you on the horizon? Because you do about one book a year, don't you?
I do.
Yeah. What's next for you?
I'm working on a book that's under contract that will come out next June. Yeah, I'm about halfway through it. And I'm scribbling ideas about the next books I want to write. I don't think I'll stop writing for a while. As Charlie and my children know, I'm really a nicer person when I write every day. It's like, let Mom go write, please. Yeah.
Now, can you, will you always set your books in Nantucket or around that area, or have you decided on different locations for future books?
My earlier books were set in different places because I hadn't come to Nantucket yet. Now I find Nantucket is so rich with metaphor. I mean, it's got the sea, it's got the freedom, it's got the fresh air, it's got people coming and going. You couldn't ask for anything better for plot and for setting, for metaphor. And the books I want to write that are in my mind are set on Nantucket.
The children of your mind, right?
The children of my mind, yes. And my heart.
And yeah, well, that's important. When you stop liking it, then your readers probably feel the same way.
Right.
Now, I want to tell you that I have been really happy to talk with you, and I think our readers will be too. I would encourage all of you to go to her website, read her books, be transported to that miraculous world of Nantucket, and also learn a little bit about yourself and your own family in the time to come. Nancy, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Arlen.